Today is Saturday, June 12th, and this is Headers and Footers, the brand new UEFA Euro 2020 show by the Toronto Star. I'm Brendan Dunlop. There are 3 matches to talk about today, which seems unthinkable after the unbelievable scenes that we saw in Copenhagen in the middle match between Denmark and Finland. In the 43rd minute, when Christian Eriksen collapsed on the pitch, it seemed unthinkable that they would finish the match at all. It seemed unthinkable that Christian Eriksen would be able to wave as he was stretchered off of the pitch, but that was the case, as we saw an image that provided a lot of hope to a world that was praying and thinking about Christian Eriksen and his family. Minutes felt like hours. And UEFA tweeted that Christian Eriksen was stable in hospital. It provided a bit of calmness to a world that was very panicked and still trying to comprehend what they'd actually seen on the touchline. After that, confirmation that the next match, Belgium versus Russia, would actually take place seemed a bit uncomfortable. And then came the news that Christian Eriksen had FaceTimed with his Denmark teammates in the change room as the players from both Denmark and Finland had spoken with UEFA and urged that the match be finished in Copenhagen today. In the end, I'm sure the Danes will regret the scoreline, but it's not the scoreline that matters on a day like this. Saturday was about so much more than soccer and really put life into perspective. Joining me on this episode in what is going to be a very different conversation than I had envisioned for our very first time on Headers and Footers is my co-host, one of my co-hosts on Footy Prime and soccer legend in this country, James Sharman. James, obviously not the way I expected to start a conversation with you, but what was your reaction watching the scenes in Copenhagen play out on Saturday?
Honestly, I think the only word to describe it is horror. You know, we're watching a guy that we've watched for many, many years at Tottenham, at Inter Milan this past year and a bit, and obviously for Denmark for many years, one of the good guys in world football. And we're watching this guy die, or that's what it felt like on the field. It's a harrowing image to try and comprehend. And even now, all these hours later, I'm trying to kind of figure out just where I'm at with it. Obviously, the hope and the good news is that he's doing okay, I guess. But at the time, it was just dreadful. You know, I'm still shaking from it somewhat. You're seeing the CPR, you're seeing the paddles on the field. You look at his teammates, his partner on the sidelines. Just an awful experience.
The immediate reaction from his teammates to form the circle, and you could see, you know, one or two peeking over their shoulder and just holding back tears just to try and stand up and stand next to their teammate on the pitch there. It really was just terrifying and unthinkable to watch, something that you just so rarely see. And also just to rack it back and to see him collapse again, because even in the moment you thought, was there something that I missed as the viewer? Was there a collision? What had happened there? Was there a head collision before?
Yeah.
Just really terrifying scenes. But the response from the referee and the response from the medical crew to be out there with the paddles and obviously get him to a scenario where he can get to the hospital and be in stable condition. Just what a blessing that's the takeaway.
It is, and we've seen these on occasion over the years. Marc-Vivien Foe, of course, Cameroon, died on the field. Fabrice Muamba was the one that really struck a chord with me. I was covering the Italian Serie A at the time, and in the FA Cup, Fabrice Muamba playing for Bolton Wanderers against Spurs collapsed, and we actually cut away to those scenes because it was the big story. The whole football world kind of stops and freezes in those moments. It all comes together. So it reminded me of that. And now in Muamba's case, he was treated on the field just as Eriksen was today. But thankfully for Muamba, there was a cardiologist in the stands who came to his assistance and saved him. His heart stopped for 78 minutes. 78 minutes. Now, Eriksen, thankfully, it wasn't that long, and it's incredible the images we saw afterwards of him leaving the field conscious.
Yes.
Just stunned me. I mean, I can't put into words how I felt when I saw those images. Are they real images, or have they been doctored? What's happened here? But that's what, I first thought of Fabrice Muamba. He pulled through. Please, can Christian Eriksen please pull through as well? And thankfully, it looks like he has. But still, this is a tournament we need. Football needs. The sporting stratosphere needs this tournament. We don't need this. This is the last thing we need. And it's a traumatic day, that's for sure.
Well, how did you feel about them playing the matches and then to resume that game in Copenhagen? Because, I mean, you say now this is hours at the end of the match day, and I'm still shaking and unsettled and just kind of going through the motions right now. Julian de Guzman expressed the same feeling on the broadcast, and I don't understand how the players in that room, UEFA says it was the players' demand to finish the match, and Christian Eriksen reportedly even FaceTimed his teammates. I couldn't imagine taking the pitch after something like that.
Can you imagine that? Christian Eriksen, whose heart stopped, He's FaceTiming his teammates an hour later. It's incredible, but I don't know how they did it, but they wanted to. And this wasn't UEFA putting pressure on. It wasn't the Danish Federation putting pressure on. The players wanted to go out there and finish this match. I give him so much credit, and we saw the character of these guys forming that circle around him to provide dignity for him on the field. We saw Kasper Schmeichel and Fabian Schär, who was the first guy in the scene, actually, how he comforted Eriksen's partner on the sidelines. This is a very, very close-knit group of players. Clearly, they're a family. And I guess they got great leaders in that room. Said, we got to do this for our guy. Let's go out there and play this game. Man, I couldn't have done it. I even thought that the Belgian game might be in question. If there wasn't more positive news about Eriksen, would they cancel that game? But as they say, that the show must go on, I suppose. But how difficult must that have been?
I was stunned to see the lineups come out before there was an official announcement that they were going to restart this match, and before there was any announcement on whether Belgium and Russia would be played. The Belgian FA tweeting out the starting 11 as if that hadn't actually happened. And then less than 2 hours after this, to see Denmark and Finland come out to play the rest of the match. I mean, I did want to start with Belgium, but let's talk there as we switch gears to what happened on the pitch. I wasn't surprised at all to see that Denmark wasn't exactly in it and didn't seem to have, be able to play to their strengths and have their head in the match, because their heads were all over the place for the last 2 hours. It
was so morbid when you saw the sub come on for Eriksen too, his replacement. Unbelievable. And then I felt so bad for Højbjerg, who had that penalty opportunity, and it was a poor penalty. But how can you blame the guy? They clearly weren't into it. How could you be into it? Even though you know your guy, your buddy, is probably going to be okay. That being said, his career, I don't want to speculate, but there's a good chance his career is over with.
Good chance,
So regardless, okay, the guy survived, but it's still horrible. You see guys react to awful injuries in the field. A guy breaks his leg, the team isn't the same afterwards. So you can imagine where their heads were. They weren't in that football match. So to lose it, it's just... I know, could they have said, listen, we can't play this, play again tomorrow? I don't know what the options were there. It's tough for everyone involved.
Well, they're not playing in the same venues. Like, this isn't years past where it's all in one country. It's not as if venues were a problem. I think, it's easy to hammer UEFA sometimes. That's something we do quite often on Footy Prime. But I think that you've got to save the players from themselves. This is something we talk about when it comes to personal injuries. It's definitely a conversation that's had in every hockey circle. That's why in a lot of ways they've had to institute a third party to make observations for head injuries and that. And I think that UEFA had a responsibility here for the players, at least in that game today, Finland and Denmark, to not have gone out and played that. I think everyone felt uncomfortable watching it. I did.
You could be right. Yeah. I mean, listen. Who's to judge the players, and their leadership in that group? But you're right. Sometimes you do need to save them from themselves. I wonder if they thought, listen, it is Finland. We should still beat this team. And frankly, Denmark should beat a team like Finland. Maybe that was partly what it was. But you would think there would be contingencies in place for such issues. And don't forget players getting injured, but, crowd trouble, reasons why games can't be finished. There should be contingencies. Okay, we can't finish it today. We can finish it tomorrow or the day after. Are they in place? I don't know. They should be in place. And if that's the case, then this is a game that definitely should have been put off 24 hours at least.
The speculation that it would affect the Belgium match or other matches of this tournament, I think a lot of that attention was put immediately on his Inter Milan teammate, Romelu Lukaku, who didn't seem to be too bothered whatsoever, or perhaps motivated by the fact that Eriksen had given his Danish teammates the green light, so he took full advantage of that, and Russia were the unlucky ones to be on the wrong end of that.
Day two, and Euro's got a star. Right, it's got its star. It's Romelu Lukaku, who not only scores 2 goals, not only goes to the camera and says, Chris, I love you, to his teammate Inter Milan, but also puts his hand to his ear to those idiot boo birds who booed the kneeing before the match. Lukaku owns this tournament right now, and many people have picked him as their golden boot winner. I didn't. That being said, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if that's what he does. He's incredible. He's coming off, I think it's fair to say, his best season in club football, leading into Milan to a championship. Wow, what a moment for him. Admit it. I mean, it must have been so emotional for him as well. This is a guy that's close to his teammate, Christian Eriksen. And I thought Belgium looked pretty good, didn't they? Even with Eden Hazard on the bench, they looked pretty good. Russia, pulled a bit of a turkey, didn't they? They didn't look very good at all. Disappointing, I thought.
A little bit. Lukaku, there's a term that I love hearing in hockey circles and North American circles where, it's a real compliment to a player to say that he's unstoppable. But in football, we like to say that the player is absolutely unplayable. And that is where Romelu Lukaku is at right now for club and country. He's 26 goals he's been involved in his last 19 matches for Belgium, and he scored 22 of them.
He's a beast.
I didn't pick him to be my Golden Boot winner either.
But hey, I know he could score 6, 7, 8 if they go along in this tournament. He's just a beast, isn't he? He's one of those guys. He's physically imposing. He's huge, but he's a modern center forward, and he can be a fox in the box. Yeah, but he can drop deep as well. He'll muscle guys off the ball. He'll shoot from distance. He's great in the air. He hasn't got a weakness. And to think that he's been let go by so many English teams who didn't think he was quite up to snuff blows my mind, because everywhere he goes, he scores goals.
You mentioned how poor you thought Russia were in that match. Were they worse than Wales for 75 minutes? Because up until the goal out of nothing from Kiefer Moore, named after Canadian Kiefer Sutherland, which, as Laura Armstrong...
Was he really?
Yes. He was named after Kiefer Sutherland.
I was going to make a joke about that on Twitter, but then I thought that just seems too obvious. But he actually was named after Jack Bauer.
Actually named after Jack Bauer, which basically means, as Laura Armstrong tweeted, that a Canadian scored at the Euros.
Yeah, that's right. We'll take it, eh?
Absolutely.
Anything we can get.
Well, I don't know if we're going to get much out of Wales, but I am very interested to see what we get out of England, as I know that you are. So we'll see England tomorrow. What are you expecting in their opener?
Hey, it's Croatia. Croatia, of course, beat England at the World Cup, but Croatia was pretty old then. They're older now. England's even younger than they were then. They play well in that tournament, but let's be honest, it's a pretty easy route to the semi-finals. I like England. What can I say, B? I'm going to pay for these words, I know, but I like England a lot. I think they're going to jump out the gates really fast, and I think they should beat Croatia. Now, do I think England will go very far in the tournament? They're likely going to play France or Portugal, right, in the round of 16. That doesn't bode very well. But for this game, depending on what the 11 is, I mean, listen, Gareth Southgate can be pragmatic at best, but he's got some great options. And your boy Jack Grealish might get his debut.
He should.
Starting in a key role at a major championship.
Deserves it. You said that a conversation we had on Footy Prime is that it's very difficult to fit Sterling and Grealish and several of the other attacking options that they have in there. But it sounds as though Sterling will also get a start.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, for me, you put Harry Kane up top and you have Mason Mount and you have Jack Grealish and you have Phil Foden behind him. But one of those guys won't be in there, I guess, if Sterling's in there, unless he goes for a different formation. So... there's so many teams this year's tournament, big teams, whose 11s are still a mystery. And I guess that speaks to depth. At the same time, it's a bit of a concern. But Gareth Southgate says that he's known his starting 11 for some time now. Obviously, injuries were a bit of an issue, and that caused some cranks in the wrench, so to speak. But he's been confident who's going to start in this game for a while. So the big unveil goes tomorrow morning, I guess.
Well, I could talk soccer with you forever, but I can't right now, so we'll have to do it.
Feels like we are these days, actually.
We definitely are. I'm excited to see you back on Sportsnet with Craig Forrest, and we'll talk to you again on Footy Prime.
Thanks, mate. We chat soon.
England head coach Gareth Southgate has a lot of options, a luxury of options that many other international managers would be quite jealous of. But that England job is also the most difficult job in the world. I don't envy the headaches that Gareth Southgate has as he leads out his starting 11, not only in this first match against Croatia, remember the side that knocked them out in the semifinals of the World Cup 3 years ago. There's so much pressure on England, and I'm glad that I can just watch it and talk about it with you. North Macedonia out in their first international tournament, led by Goran Pandev, who's older than his country. Serie A star will be looking to deliver against Austria. Maybe some value on North Macedonia in a much-anticipated match. A much-anticipated return to international football from the Netherlands, who have missed out on a tournament for 40 years. So it seems. The Dutch have gone through a real blip and are hoping to remind you that they are just as bright in footballing terms as the orange shirts that they wear. I'm very excited to see the Dutch, but I am interested to see how they stack up against Ukraine, who will be no pushover in that match on Sunday. Look, Saturday was a heavy day all around. Here's to hoping that on tomorrow's show, we're just talking about the football. We'll be talking about it here on Headers and Footers every single night during Euro 2020. So watch us on YouTube and like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for kicking it with us.